Before we begin, I just wanted to mention this item I'm holding in my hand. In support of our vision of being a welcoming community and appreciating the diversity of our neighborhood, we provide our service simultaneously interpreted in Spanish. So if you know somebody who wants to come to the service, when they come in on every second Sunday, they can be greeted right in the back of the sanctuary where they can pick up one of these devices, place it on their ear, and listen to the service simultaneously interpreted right now by Julie Burns. Also, yes, thank you, it is quite wonderful. Not only that, wait, there's more. We have a blog, the Center for Spiritual Living in Espanol, where there is material in Spanish as well as the video with the overlay of the interpretation. So there's a whole library of information. So a person doesn't even need to step in here to benefit if they are Spanish speaking and maybe feel less comfortable about their ability to communicate in English. They can do it on the internet and feel welcome in our center. So keep that in mind when you're telling people about your center, that we offer our services in Spanish also. And thank you to Julie Burns for offering her volunteer interpretation services for the benefit of a world that works better for everyone. This morning, our topic is being vulnerable. Is it a strength or is it a weakness? Now, I love today's topic for two reasons. And the first reason is that this whole month of March, at 12:30 on Tuesdays, and we still have several Tuesdays left, 12:30 to 1:30, we are having something that we're calling a lunch and learn. People bring their bag lunch, and we sit together, and it's a free event, and we talk about this very topic, vulnerability. We're using Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly, and we're discussing the questions such as, what is vulnerability? And what isn't it? And what stops a person from being vulnerable? And where in our lives could we be a little more vulnerable? And when we are vulnerable, is that a strength or is it a weakness? Oh, it's some good stuff. And you're invited to join. You can just drop in, come along. If you've got free time on Tuesdays this month, come and lunch and learn with us. The second reason that I'm enjoying the topic so much is because I really got into the topic of vulnerability and its connection to kindness when I was writing my own new book, Ordinary Goodness. And what I discovered in the writing of it is that these are spiritual values that we've been talking about. Goodness, kindness, love, compassion, they aren't always the easiest things to embrace, exactly because they tend to make us vulnerable. The example that I give in my book is that of a music teacher who has an enthusiastic music student, but one who isn't particularly talented, showing little signs of progress. And as it happens, that time comes when the student may have to make a decision, the parents too, about investing in more music lessons, which can be costly, and maybe even going the next level up and buying a better instrument. And then the question arises, what is the kindest thing to do? To say nothing or to tell the truth? Now, this is not a hypothetical scenario. It's actually what happened to me when I was a music teacher. I had to find the way to have a conversation with a student that I had because his idea of what he could do musically was not matching the actual progress he was making. Now, if he simply wanted to be an enthusiastic music lover, amateur, great, I could get behind that. But no, he had grand plans, and he was never going to be, in my estimation, which is sometimes incorrect, he was never going to be the performer he imagined he was going to become. And I really didn't want to hurt his feelings. At the time, I remember thinking, you know what, this would be easier if I just said nothing, just go along. Or would it? Because would I feel decent about doing that. And so I felt vulnerable because I couldn't see the way through clearly. I couldn't see the easy way out. And I think that's what vulnerability is exactly about, that awkwardness. Because I may have to admit that I don't actually know. And that admission may destroy this perfect facade that I've got all my stuff together. And I know. I learned then that it takes great strength to be vulnerable enough to accept that I may have to do something even though I could be wrong. It takes great strength to admit that the information I'm being called to share could possibly be difficult for another person to hear. I might hurt somebody's feelings. And communicating difficult information continues to be a part of life. And there are other risks, personal risks. I may get hurt. I may be embarrassed. I could get rejected. And that's exactly what vulnerability means. It means, well, it's about the uncertainty of being defenseless and out of control. I did have the conversation with the student. It didn't go well. You know, sometimes I want to trust that if I am vulnerable, that it will go well. Well, it doesn't always. I've told myself many times that if I just avoid the feelings of being out of control and defenseless and uncertain, then I'll be safe. But it turns out that it's not completely accurate. Actually, the opposite. By avoiding some really important and difficult or uncomfortable conversations I have in my past, caused more harm than good. I'm thinking about examples from my past, and maybe you have similar ones where I stayed too long in a relationship or in a job or in a point of view and ended up leading other people on by not telling them the truth. Acting one way when I was feeling a different way. I asked my partner Kevin for an example of when avoiding being vulnerable in our relationship didn't work out so well for him. It's a vulnerable question. And I loved his answer. I even wrote it down. He says, conflict makes me feel vulnerable because I want so badly to be liked and to have your approval. But when I'm not willing to move through the conflict, that's when I don't get my needs met. And then I get disappointed in myself for not being authentic. That's a vulnerable answer. You know, Kevin and I, we grew up in different generations, and for him, coming out, I perceive, was less vulnerable for him than it was for me. I mean, his parents marched with him in gay pride. I can remember the sheer terror of planning to tell my parents, not being in control, not being able to predict their response, not knowing if it would be okay, and shaking all the way up to the moment of doing it, literally terrified. Being vulnerable takes courage and strength. I've had to learn to trust goodness and kindness and compassion to show me the way through very difficult situations, even though my body is shaken and even though I want to run away, and with no guarantee that it will have a happy ending. Kindness takes strength and courage too. It's the same. My family taught me to be kind, but my society taught me the opposite. My society taught me that kindness could be weakness. In fact, I remember being taught that it's stronger to be blunt and forceful. It's stronger to be ready to fight back and take a stand. But since studying the science of mind at a Center for Spiritual Living like this one, I've learned that actually it takes greater strength not to retaliate. It takes greater strength not to attack when provoked. When I'm at the mercy of my reactions, that's when I'm weak, because I'm all reactive, and then almost anything can set me off. Then that's when I'm a slave to other people's words and actions. And I've had to learn how to interrupt my reactive mind and take a breath and take my mind in the direction that I wanted it to go in. That's the heart of our teaching. Lead my mind and don't let it lead me when it's being reactive. You and I can do that. We can lead our minds in new directions. For example, especially when we realize something like unkindness is ruining us, ruining our experience, we can intervene and take our minds in the direction of kindness. That is possible, not easy. And it takes great strength to be genuinely kind because it's so vulnerable and there are so few guarantees. And the word genuine is so important. It's key because there is a difference between genuine kindness and pretend kindness. When a person is pretending to be kind, well, they don't have to be vulnerable because it's an act. So really, there's nothing to lose in a sense. It may be an attempt to control the outcome of something, or maybe it's an attempt to avoid conflict. But what I know now is that being kind does not mean I go along quietly with injustice happening around me. No, vulnerability shows up again, and it's about the nervousness, the awkwardness that comes up when I know I must say something and I don't want to, and I'm afraid to, and I don't know how it will turn out, and I don't know if I will be rejected, and I have to find the kindest way, the way that is consistent with my spiritual values, and act anyway. It's like when you're the only one in your family, or you're the only one in a group of friends who can't go along with something that's happening because it's hurting you or it's in conflict with you. It might even be destroying you, and you have to find the way to speak up and step out of it. It's awkward. I've been reading about an organization called Life After Hate. Yeah. It's a United States nonprofit organization. It was created specifically to support people who wanted to make new choices, lead their minds in a new direction. In particular, people who wanted to leave the extremist white power movement because of its racism and hatred. And how difficult it is to step away from that when it's your identity, your family, your safe place. And the team at Life After Hate were all once part of the white power movement, so they know what it's like when one day the light goes on in someone's mind and says something like, "This isn't for me, but I don't know the way out." They understand what draws a person to an extremist group. And equally important, they understand why a person would want to leave it. And because they do, they understand how vulnerable the decision is. And their motto is, no judgment, just help. Oh, I've been thinking about the great kindness in that statement. No judgment, just help. Being kind like that can have its challenges too, because of the perception that being kind is a kind of weakness. The author of the blog Tiny Buddha, she discovered that her name is Linnea Bond, and she ran into trouble in her corporate job because she tended to treat people ethically and kindly, and her supervisor did not approve of that. He saw that as a sign of potential weakness, and he fired her, even though she was earning very well for the company. So her kindness left her vulnerable to being treated unfairly. And I can see how a person may take that into their mind and build a case against ever being kind again. But not her. No, that didn't stop Linnea from following her natural inclination to be kind and helpful and ethical towards others. And she went on finding opportunities. She volunteered to help Tibetan refugees establish their own businesses so they could become economically self-sufficient. Because, as she said in her own words, each act of kindness changes the world. Kindness is what made her world significant, even though it made her vulnerable to unfair treatment. That takes courage. So it's a lesson for me, and this is the lesson I'm learning. Feel the awkwardness and the messiness of not knowing, and still find a way to live by your spiritual values anyway. Take your mind, Edward, in the direction of your spiritual values and trust that it will be the better decision for your life, even though the outcome may not always be pretty. I asked my friend, Rabbi George Gittelman, for his take on vulnerability. Here's what he said. Some people think vulnerability is just about being weak or narcissistic, without boundaries, letting it all hang out, wearing your emotions on your shirt sleeve. Not true. Vulnerability, he said, is about courage, authenticity, and faith. Being vulnerable is being real, showing up and living your truth. And it is also about reciprocity. And you know, when he said that, it reminded me of Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly, because on page 45, she writes something almost identical to that. And I wanted to share it with you. She writes, vulnerability is based on mutuality and requires boundaries and trust. It's not oversharing. It's not purging. It's not indiscriminate disclosure. And it's not celebrity-style social media information dumps. Vulnerability, she writes, is about sharing our feelings and our experiences with people who have earned the right to hear them. Being vulnerable is open and mutual and is an integral part of the trust-building process. And that's exactly what we're talking about on Tuesday. That's coming up at our Lunch and Learn at 12:30. We're going to ask the question, what does it mean to wear my heart on my sleeve? And when is that a good idea? And when isn't it? And how does a person earn another person's vulnerability? And what can I do when someone can't handle my vulnerability? Oh, it's good stuff. C.S. Lewis, in his book, The Four Loves, he warns us about the dangers of avoiding vulnerability. He says, to love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything, and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping your heart intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully, round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in a casket of your selfishness, but in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, and irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. Intense. I invite you now to join me in a meditation of loving kindness by breathing in together and exhaling, letting your eyes close. And as you do that, I invite you to bring into your awareness the image or the memory of someone who loves you very, very much. It could be someone with you, or someone who is in another place, could be living or already passed on. But you're using your imagination to remember the felt experience of their love, as if it is transmitting a message from their heart to yours, saying, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be happy. And as you breathe that in, you allow the imagined scene to change, bringing into your awareness the thought of someone that you love very, very much. It could be someone sitting with you right now, or someone somewhere else. They could be living or past. And you're feeling the felt experience of the love you have for them, as if your heart is transmitting a message to theirs that says, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be happy. And as you breathe in the atmosphere of that love, you let the scene that you're imagining change. And you bring into your awareness the thought of yourself as if sitting in front of a mirror. But the image you see in the mirror is not an ordinary reflection. It's the image of how the universe sees you. And you imagine a message of love radiating from the universe to your heart that says, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. And may you be happy. And as you breathe in the felt experience of that blessing, you realize that there is enough love in you and enough love in the universe to expand in all directions. And it is as if a message radiates from you from some higher plane of consciousness that says, may all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be well. May all beings be peaceful and at ease. May all beings be happy.